we all know what I'm doing today to be brave. So I was really been curious about how I would feel standing here. And so far, so good. So I just wanted to remind us all what, I think it was Charles Fillmore used to say Lent was, let's eliminate negative thinking. So that's a good way to translate that into daily life. In a Buddhist way, I'd like us to raise bodhicitta. That's what we call raising a good intention. So let's just hold a good thought for today, for me. Yay, thank you. So I know, thank you. I know you all know me, but I'd like to introduce myself in a style that's favored at CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, where I'm currently a student in their Center for Psychedelic Training and Research. And please forgive me, I'm going to be reading this. I'm going to try to look up and smile. I'm a white cisgender female using the pronouns she, her, and we. I'm in my senior years and working to be aware of the advantages, responsibilities, and perils of that status. I was born in Akron, Ohio, in the county of Summit, on the traditional lands of the Lenape and Shawnee tribes. And I'm speaking to you today on the traditional lands of the Coast Miwok people. I'm the mother of two sons, Conroy and Matthew, and the grandmother of Dean, Calvin, Lucia, and Talise Cavanna. I practice a form of Tibetan Buddhism called Vajrayana, which is sometimes called deity yoga. I'm a member of the Native American Church with a lodge in Berkeley, where I engage in prayer and plant medicines. I was in a Gurdjieff community for 40 years, and this month I've been a member of Unity in Marin for 25 years. I want to thank Reverend Deanne. She's watching online, and hi there, all you online people, for calling my name. And I want to acknowledge her courage for bringing this topic into our awareness. I'm grateful to Tom McAuliffe, he's been my spiritual direction coach in shaping this narrative and its delivery. We had fun, we laughed and cried, and he's a true Dharma brother. And blessings and kudos to Carolyn Gautier for her creativity and musical talent, because she actually created a song for this talk, which you're going to hear later. And Gabe, my dear friend, for rearranging his schedule to be here today to support me. I've tried to structure this, and to you, my beloved community. For many people, that idea is a great concept, but for us, it's a reality. It's born of years of working, praying, laughing, crying, and eating together. So I'm so grateful. So I've tried to structure the narrative into 3 parts: my life before the financial loss, the process I went through to transform that loss, and my life now. But first, some context and influences per my spiritual directive coach. My childhood was stable and low trauma. In fact, there was a lot of fun. My parents were both single children, so they collaborated to have 6 of us. They both seemed to enjoy being parents, and during dinner we would tell jokes, trying to outdo each other. And during dishes each night we would sing songs, and after sweeping the floor, my mom would teach us dances from her era, like the Charleston and the Black Bottom. And that's for you, Tom. He told me to shake my booty. So we taught each other how to jitterbug. They owned a sewing machine company that was under our home, so I always had access to at least one parent anytime in my entire life. And I had a really cute picture of all of us when we were kids, but this is the 6 of us as adults, and now there's just 4 of us left. I'm now the matriarch of the family, but trust me, that means nothing. When my sister was the matriarch, we towed the line. So, let's see. After my maternal grandmother's death, they moved the family to Florida to take over her businesses, and I was in nursing school by that time. And after graduation, I worked at my home hospital before moving to California. And although I've always worked in allopathic medicine, I've always been troubled by the lack of curiosity in that system for how disease begins or even accidents. So I've always concurrently studied yoga and meditation, Chinese meridians, energy medicine, sound healing, and food as medicine. And I've been able to avoid taking any prescription meds except a rare antibiotic with these practices, and I've experienced no surgeries or major accidents. This is important because I developed high blood pressure after the loss, and I had to go on a prescription medicine, which I was grateful for because it did control it, but I seemed like a failure. So as a child, I had a longing to travel to faraway places with strange sounding names, singing this song while I did the laundry, bring your stationary tub, clothesline style. And this longing was satisfied by 3 years in the Peace Corps in Iran, and then a year in Dharamsala, India, where the Dalai Lama had established a monastery. And it was there that my love affair with Tibetan Buddhism began. I had Dharma teachings with great Geshe Rabten. I used to say he looked like a truck driver that was a Buddhist monk. And I had darshan with the Dalai Lama. And I learned Vipassana meditation with Goenka, who had just begun to teach Vipassana. And it was also where I became a mother with my Dharma partner and husband, Roger. So that was us. And then fast forward to the next 43 years. They were spent establishing a household and family, practicing nursing, helping my husband establish an Oriental rug business, having another son, and continued spiritual practices. Somewhat significantly, all these practices seem to tie together or have a through line in some way. The law of 3, as it's known in the Gurdjieff work, holy affirming, holy denying, holy sustaining from Hinduism, the triple gem in Buddhism, the Dharma, the Sangha, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and the Trinity in Christianity, mind, idea, and expression, as it's related by unity. So this was some of the context of my life when I retired at age 71, 8 years after Roger's death. I sold our family home in Larkspur, 28 years, and divided the proceeds into a traditional portfolio and in real estate. For 6 years, I had an income that exceeded my needs, which was fun. And I was able to be generous with myself, my family, and unity in Marin. I traveled locally and abroad, including a pilgrimage to the Camino. That's me at the end. And I was able to support my grandson, Dean, who is a competitive golfer from age 7 to 16. And yearly, I rented a large house at Stinson Beach for the families of both of my kids to come together and be together. And since there were 1,099 slides of Stinson Beach, we just kind of found out that was a good one to use. So I was also able to pursue an art process called Zentangle, which I do to this day. And it gave me a lot of pleasure, and I often do these during my sessions with clients. Some people here have done that practice. So I was enjoying my life very much with friends, family, unity, and Marin activities. And then that all ended, this is part 2, in May of 2020. After 2 months after the COVID pandemic began, the principal of PFI died, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, FBI, were called in, and all of our payments stopped. And so for me, that represented about half of my monthly income and sent me into a tailspin of disbelief, fear, and bewilderment. I worked the spiritual principles of unity as much as I could, using the mantra that was part of Bill Englehart's legacy. You know, why is this happening for me instead of why is this happening to me? And remember that through line of all my practices, and while this was a lofty spiritual principles, they did not come to my rescue. So I felt ashamed, I felt tricked by the system, mortified, and afraid for the future. I was embarrassed and dismayed that I had convinced a few of my friends and other people to invest. I mourned the loss of being financially stable and independent. I worried about becoming a burden to my family and for the loss of the financial ability to travel. In short, I was no longer enjoying my life. I knew I had a lot to be grateful for, but I was not feeling that. I was feeling loss and the probability of a shortened lifespan, and I thought of Rumi's poem, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and attend them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in." I wasn't making much progress on that front. And I was curious. The spiritual student in me was curious about how this would all turn out. What would the for me be? It was into this time space that my youngest son, Matthew, said, "Mom, I think you should try ketamine." Matthew's a therapist specializing in trauma. He's a pipe holder in the Lakota tradition and a medicine journey leader. I had no idea what ketamine was, but I trusted him. He set me up with headphones for music and an eye mask. I swished a somewhat distasteful lozenge for about 20 minutes, and began experiencing the altered state that ensued. It was pleasant, gentle, and I remember saying, I want to connect. And I love old people, which is really great since I am one. And the session was brief and it lasted less than an hour, but it was the shifts in my thinking, my reactions, that were the most compelling. I spontaneously started having meaningful, authentic conversations and connections with the Uber driver, or the woman at the checkout counter. This was new. I noticed that where I would have reacted to a comment or a situation in a snarky, critical, or negative way, I didn't. I felt more compassion and love. I discovered that love did not require an object. It was an action coming from the heart and could be felt and experienced, no matter if it was reciprocated or not. That was a very liberating experience. I could literally love my enemies. Remember that nothing had changed in the outer condition of my life. I did not magically have the lost money restored, but my life changed. I began enjoying it again. I began feeling that I would find a way through. Matthew again stepped in and said, you should do this work. You're a natural. When Tom was coaching me, he laughed that I had birthed my own medicine man. So I began exploring that possibility. After all, I did want to create more income. I had 20 years' experience of sitting with laboring women who were experiencing very altered states. So I studied psychedelics to get CEUs to reactivate my RN license. Who knew that LSD lasted 12 hours? It's like, who has time for that? So, when that was done, I traveled to Colorado to take a training for licensed professionals at Prati, Psychedelic Research and Training Institute. And then I waited. I finished my training in May and did not have a client until December. I spoke openly about my experience and interest in psychedelic medicine. I attended Zoom lectures. I read extensively about ketamine and other medicines, but no clients. We were advised in training to not get ahead of the medicine. It felt like the admonition to wait on the Lord. And I continue to hold that adage today as a way of being with this work. You can't force change, but with patience and continued cultivation of your practice, the fruits can and will come. As I was preparing for this presentation, I found a drawing that I had made on the back of a minister's report, January 9, 2015, to try and visualize and internalize the principles of the five principles of unity. We're trying to understand how these work. And I believe that I was stuck in moving from prayer and meditation to transformation. And the ketamine journey transported me to transformation. And then the actions that I took flowed naturally from there. So, what is ketamine? It's a prescription medication that has been around for over 50 years. It's considered a necessary medicine by the World Health Organization. It must be stocked in emergency rooms and urgent care clinics. It has an impeccable safety record when it's used appropriately, partly because it does not depress respirations. It is so safe, it is used in pediatric and veterinary medicine. or on the battlefield as a buddy drug, and most commonly as an induction to anesthesia. This new use in mental health is considered a novel approach, and it's being researched broadly in that context. It seems to create neuroplasticity and open the brain to an increased learning capacity for a period of time. It allows the recipient to rewire what's called the default mode network. It's the area of our brain that responds in pattern ways that we may have outgrown. Significantly, it seems to increase the capacity to experience and express love. I thought of Rumi, the path of love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. I was devastated by the loss of my financial resources, and my demon, as what was dubbed by a cohort of Prati, was devastated by my ingestion of ketamine. So, part 3, who I am, my life now. Regarding my practice as a ketamine facilitator, I've supported over 100 journeys for people with various issues, from exploring explosive anger reactions, intractable or dysfunctional grief, nail biting that progressed to cuticle biting, acute anxiety to the point of being unable to eat, lifelong depression, alcohol use disorder, and life enhancement intentions. I've had the privilege of witnessing profound and heartening changes in their lives, and I want to salute their courage and express my gratitude for their trust in me as a facilitator. I set up a website. My oldest son, Conroy, who took over the rug business that Roger started and has expertise in managing a very complicated website, he helped me set up what he called a digital business card. He said, "That's all you need, Mom." It's ketaminework.com. Last November, I was hired by Naropa University to be part of a 40-person medical team to train 120 doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, marriage and family therapists, and clergy to experience ketamine as medicine. Thanks. I've continued to educate myself by taking another training at Prati on the use of ketamine for end of life and existential distress. I was recently hired by a clinic in Petaluma to be part of the medical staff for their 2-person model to administer ketamine. And last Monday, I met with a neighbor who's a therapist and ketamine guide and would like my help in setting up a local clinic. Can you imagine my surprise at having a neighbor move in who's also a ketamine guide? I mean, like, what are the chances? So this part of my life feels full and interesting, and I'm passionate about this medicine's ability to create connection to this field of love, the very essence of who we are. This is why I have called it an entheogen, God within, rather than a psychedelic mind manifesting. There are profound behavioral and psychological changes that can and do occur, but it's the spiritual changes that most interest me and are aligned with our vision statement, a world spiritually awakened and transformed through experiencing our divine potential. It's my mission to be wholeheartedly dedicated to spiritual growth, my own and others, and to be in service to that growth. And working with this medicine in a sacred way is for me a path to that. But there's more. My personal life has expanded. As many of you know, last May, Bernie Carter and I began practicing dating. So he's, as you know him, the widower of Melanie Carter, who's a dear friend and beloved Unity member. So we knew each other somewhat. In the development of our practice, moving from dating, relationship, and engagement, we're all romantics at heart. So he purchased half of my home. And this allowed me to pay off the mortgage, and it completely restored my financial loss. As a therapist, he's become my fellow student at CIIS and companion in pursuing psychedelic medicine. Engaging in a committed and loving relationship is something that I never anticipated after 17 years of living and managing my life as a single person. And I'm curious if this is a direct response to the transformation of my default mode network. Tom shared another iteration of the law of three: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And I think the thesis I had for my life was, I'm fine alone. I don't need a partner. The antithesis in the form of my loss was, you need help. And the synthesis seems to be that I can be independent while being in a relationship. and having fun doing it. So my love affair with Tibetan Buddhism continues, partly as a response to the embodiment of a fierce compassion dakini during my last training at Prati. And for the first time in 6 years at Taramandala, which is the spiritual community from my Tibetan teacher, there was a training in this practice. So I took that training, and each Thursday morning I sit with practitioners from around the world. We gather on Zoom, and the practice is to bring the wisdom and the compassion of the enlightened feminine into our world, which, as we know, so desperately needs this balance. So get ready, this is her image, Siamuka. So she's a lion-headed Dakini, she's the queen of the Dakinis. So I'm humbled and grateful to all my teachers and the support and direction that I received to share my story with you, including this excerpt from a talk Jack Kornfield gave last November. We know that we're not separate. You know it, especially when you're on the mountaintop looking down after some amazing hike, or listening to a piece of music that transports you beyond the small sense of self. You know it when you make love or take psychedelics, or have some profound meditation or dance until you disappear. We all know it. So mostly I'm grateful to you, my beloved community, knowing that our practice of diversity and inclusion will welcome the path I'm on. Each of us has a story. Thank you for letting me share mine with you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And in true Buddhist fashion, let's dedicate the merit of this time together and any metta, universal loving kindness that's been generated to be sent to all those who need it without one exception. So in our affirmations today, and let's just say them together. I am love. I am patience. I am curious. So, thank you.